Okay, start recording. Screen. Chapter 15. Actually, I changed my mind. Sid, do you want to read chapter 15 with us? Okay, because you can kind of just read chapter 15 and then read whatever you wanted. Okay, chapter 15, and I changed this. Chapter 15, the arrow made ready on the string. Night, the same day as the previous chapter. Louise turns in her sleep, face twitching, sweating, whimpering. Her eyes shoot open and she gasps. Calming down, she sits up in bed and looks to Audrey, who is sound asleep in the other bed. Still panting, Louise sits still for a moment. Holding her doll, she reads the clock on the wall. 2:30 a.m. She lays back down with her eyes closed, attempting to go back to sleep. With no success, she wearily opens her eyes and gets out of bed. She opens the curtains of their bedroom window, revealing light in the distance. Louise looks confused and narrows her eyes. Black smoke billows into the sky from a point within the wooded hills. Louise's eyes widen in fear as she turns back to look at the door. Louise leaves the room and enters the hallway. She looks at the closed door to her parents' room, but decides not to enter. Turning, Louise sees Abigail's door ajar and pushes it open. Inside, Abigail lays sprawled out and snoring on her unmade bed. Louise approaches slowly and taps Abigail on the shoulder. Abigail? Abigail, wake up! Abigail groans in her sleep, but rouses, her eyes opening and closing. What is it? There's a fire outside. Abigail opens her eyes. In the yard? In the forest. I saw a light in the hills. Just somebody's house. Should go back to sleep. Abigail turns over. But I think I saw smoke too. Abigail regrettably gets up. Show me. Louise looks through Abigail's window and points out a brand of orange light between the hills. Fire, but it's far. And I don't think it's spreading. We'll be safe here. But Esther's house is that way. What if she's in trouble? Abigail stops and looks sympathetically. I'm sure it's nothing. You can call the fire department if you want, but someone surely already has. They'll put it out before long. Okay, if you're sure. Abigail gets back into bed. Louise goes back into the hall and closes the door behind her. She walks downstairs into the kitchen and takes some pot roast out of the icebox. She sits at the table eating, and her eyes drift toward the coat rack. Without finishing her bowl, she stands up and puts her snow clothes on, tying the laces on her long black boots and putting on white knit gloves. Louise leaves through the front door and follows the same path Audrey took through the forest. She appears nervous but not doubtful. About 25 to 30 minutes pass and she arrives on the scene, the fire clearly visible through the trees. Esther's house burns from the bottom up, flames creeping toward the roof. In front of the house stand the silhouettes of two cats against the orange light. Louise rushes toward the clearing, the snow crunching beneath her paws, alerting him. The cats turn, revealing Frankie and Adrian. Adrian. Louise, funny seeing you out here. What's happened? Are Esther and her family okay? Frankie. Don't know. We reckon it must have caught from the fireplace. Unless it was arson. Dad says some cats do it trying to collect on insurance money. Louise looks baffled by the suggestion, but stays composed. She turns to Adrian. Is someone coming to put it out? I sent my dad into town to fetch help. He's asked me to stay put and watch so that it doesn't spread into the trees. Louise looks at the steadily growing fire, dread growing. Then she leaves the boys to inspect the sides of the house. Hey, where are you going? Esther's room is on the second floor. I'm trying to see through the window. Adrian walks by her, peering skeptically at the house. I mean, if she were in there, we'd probably hear some yelling. You don't know that. Throw something at it. What? A rock, a shoe, something. If she's in there, we have to get her attention. Look, Louise, I like your energy, but we should probably stay out of it until the grown-ups get here. I don't really want to get involved. What are you talking about? Don't you always say how you're going to be some brave war hero? Well, here's your chance and you're sniveling like a kit. Frankie, help me find a rock. Frankie looks flustered and watches Louise kicking through the snow. Not finding anything, Louise resorts to yelling, paws around her mouth calling for Esther. Adrian watches her pityingly but annoyed. Frankie makes a snowball and launches it at the house. It thumps against the wood and falls into the flames. Adrian joins him and the boys throw a good amount of snowballs. Louise stops yelling, her voice tired, and looks exhausted toward the boys, who are having a good time. That's not going to work. Can you at least throw them at the window? Adrian shrugs but assents to the command. Suddenly, Frankie finds an empty glass bottle buried in the snow and launches it at the window, shattering it in a scream of broken glass. Adrian says, "Woohoo! Good one!" Louise looks at him harshly, but quickly darts her eyes back to the window. Esther's form appears cautiously from the gloom into the face of the window. The window is small and grated, and Esther looks out at the three kits with horror-struck eyes. Louise calls out to her, "Esther, can you hear us?" Adrian says, "Jump, we'll catch you." Esther places a paw on the window, the broken section no bigger than her head. She pushes meekly on the glass, shivering. In breathless horror, "I can't fit." Flames lick the wood below Esther's window. Adrian, commandingly, "Throw another one, Frank!" Frankie muddles around, annoyed, not expecting to find something else to throw. Louise, to herself, quiet and unbelievingly, "She's not going to make it." Adrian's expression grows grim. He looks behind himself for help, but none arrive. He slowly reaches for Louise's paw. Louise shivers with blank eyes, accepting his paw, but looking at the sparks flying into the sky. The wood cracks and gurgles. Following the sparks, Louise's eyes drift to the dark, leafless branches of the trees above, droning black against the night sky of stars. Letting go of his hand. "We'll climb a tree." "What?" Approaching the trunk. "If I can get above the house, I can break a hole in the roof and pull her out." "That's insane! What if you can't get in?" "Then you'll stay in the branches to pull me back up." Adrian stares in indignant shock. In an annoying schoolboy voice, "I'm not helping." Louise ignores him, taking off her gloves to scale the tree. She kicks against the bark with her boots, using her claws to pull herself up to the nearest branch. She stands high above the house, lurching down on a branch hanging above the roof. "I need someone to put their weight on the branch to get me closer." Adrian looks like a sad, bratty kid, eyes darting to Frankie as if a challenge to disobey him. Frankie wordlessly ascends the tree, messily and loudly, as his claws send down a flurry of bark grit. He weighs his front paws down on the root of the branch, allowing Louise to descend closer to the roof. His force is strong and imprecise, causing Louise to slip from the branch, letting out a yell. She lands on the roof with her tail fluffed up, but steadies herself. "Good job," says Frankie. Louise takes a step, causing the roof to collapse from under her. The fall lets out a crash of cracking and snapping wood. Frankie and Adrian look on at the scene in utter marvel. Several moments pass. Adrian says, "No way." Frankie looks intensely from his branch. Adrian yells, "Louise! Louise, can you hear us?" Frankie yells, "Louise." Silence. Adrian, getting sick. "What? What now?" We wait for her to come up with Esther. Adrian looks disbelievingly, his eyes wide as panic sets in. The boys stand still as the trees lurch and fire pops. Adrian begins to whimper. Frankie says, he says a bad word. Adrian looks in astonishment. "You better not have gotten this girl killed," said Frankie. "You're the one who helped her." "I thought she could do it. You're the one who didn't. You should have done something to stop her." Adrian falls back as if injured, moaning, "Shut up." The world begins to blur around Adrian. His eyes are slits against the ground. An unknown voice. "Adrian? Adrian!" Adrian starts to rouse, still blurry. Adrian's father. "Adrian, what's happened?" Adrian looks helplessly at his father. About a dozen silhouetted cats approach from the shadows of the forest, carrying buckets. A hound pulls a carriage with barrels of water. Frankie is gone, and when I revise this, it'll probably be more like, It'll probably be written more like, what was I going to say? It's like, it should be written as like Frankie exits, but like there was some adjective I was going to use because this is the last time we see Frankie, and I'm gonna like make a note whenever a character appears for the last time. Anyways, Abigail from the crowd, looking at Adrian. Where is Louise? Adrian fails to respond. His legs buckle to the ground and he vomits. Abigail's expression darkens as the front door explodes in flames. Louise erupts from the house, carrying Esther's scruff in her jaws. Flames lick Esther's long white fur as Louise drops her in the snow, collapsing. Abigail yells for Louise. Abigail races toward her sister. Louise's eyes stare back, dull and tired. The other cats follow close behind. Words shouted are obscured. Abigail cradles Louise in her arms as shadows swallow Esther's body. The words cannot be read. A tom. She's going to be okay, miss. Abigail pants, tears welling up in her eyes. The world goes black around Abigail, and claws pull Louise from her. Surrounded by complete black, Abigail puts her head in her paws, sobbing. To her left stands an orange tabby Tom with a white chin and a deep maroon cloak. Strapped to his back is a quiver with bronze-tipped arrows. In his left arm he holds an ornate copper bow, in his right a leather-bound, ornamented tome. Golden wreaths dangle from each of his wrists, and orange maple leaves grow within his curly fur. His eyes speckled with golden light, look through Abigail's heart. Abigail, wonderstruck, calls inaudibly, Klaus. Chapter end. I'm glad this is better now that you're awake, Lee. And yes, dogs are the horses, Marsh. Voice acted map would be fun, Raven. I love Klaus. We've already read this, and you're sobbing. Thank you for the popcorn. I got some popcorn delivered. I don't like that lark. Okay, are there any questions before we move to chapter 16? And Sid, so these are like scripts to be drawn out in the graphic novel, so it is a little bit bare bones, but I tried to make it nice to read. The bad word was holy fuck. I didn't want to say it because I'm not alone. What happened to Abigail? Yeah, it's kind of obscure. It's actually explained in the next chapter. But so Louise woke her up to tell her that there was a fire. Abigail said, I don't care, and went back to sleep. But then she appears here looking for Louise. Yeah, so she leaves alone. Like she goes to get her food and she's like not hungry and she sees her coat and she's like, I'm just gonna go check it out. Yeah, it should be pretty clear when it's made as a comic. Okay, any other questions? Are we ready for chapter 16? Okay. Larkspur has read chapter 16 and has given me some fabulous feedback. Oh, okay. Don't read ahead. Don't read ahead even though you can see it. I'm just going to read it to you. Okay, let's go. Chapter 16. It will take you when it's time. The next day, about noon, overcast. Roses drop their petals in the garden. A doctor's house in downtown Chamberfield. Gloriana and Charles stand together. Gloriana talking to the chaplain. All are weary and exhausted. Harsh white light cuts down from the cloudy sky, attacking Abigail's eyes. Abigail stands in the hallway with dark circles under her eyes. She looks like a corpse. Abigail excuses herself, and a nurse gets the door for her. Abigail exits the building. Outside, cats on the street stare. Too tired to care, Abigail walks away from the more populated area of town and into a garden, resting on a tree. She breathes meditatively and grounds herself in her surroundings, watching as a sparrow hops among the tussocks. She closes her eyes. When she opens them, a cat stands before her. Audrey? Audrey's face stares back, frozen in shock. Abigail quickly gets up and anxiously caresses Audrey's cheek with her paw. Audrey still says nothing, too overwhelmed. Abigail brings her close and pulls her against her chest, sobbing. I'm so sorry. This shouldn't be happening. I shouldn't have let it. I shouldn't have let her go. Oh, Audrey, it's all my fault. Audrey's face contracts, looking agitated and confused. Abigail leans over her, crying. Audrey says, Why didn't you tell me? Abigail looks up and wipes her own tears. It was all so much. I think Mom wanted to let you sleep. But she was gone by the time they got here. He said she breathed too much smoke. Audrey tenses. Abigail, I don't know what I was thinking. She told me she could see the fire. I couldn't sleep and I found her bowl left on the table. She left on her own. If I had been faster. Audrey says nothing, getting angrier. I'm so sorry. Audrey snaps, pushing her away. This isn't about you. Abigail looks distraught. This is about my sister. Don't make it about how you feel or how much you hate yourself. It's her that's dead. It's her who'll never get to grow up or have a family or be happy because of what she did. Abigail looks horrified. Audrey, I don't want to talk to you if you're just going to keep on whining about how miserable you are, and I'm not going to let you use me as a prop to make yourself feel better. Just tell me where Mom and Dad are. Abigail, defeated. At the doctor's house. At least, they should still be there. Audrey finally drops sad tears. Huffing, she turns away and walks on. Abigail sits collapsed under the tree, trembling, with her paw slightly outstretched toward Audrey. Evening. Transition with singing birds. Audrey sits alone in her room, trying to read. Restless, kicking her feet. Curled around a pillow. Gloriana pushes the door open, looking through. Gloriana, meekly. Do you want anything more to eat? The Applebee's brought hot soup and mashed potatoes. I'm fine, Mom. Thank you. It's here if you change your mind. I love you, honey. Uh-huh. Gloriana leaves, regrettably. Audrey drops her book intentionally, and it falls dramatically on the floor. Audrey lays sprawled on her bed, looking at the ceiling. Louise's bed lies unmade, her rabbit doll on the pillow. Audrey looks at it from the sides of her eyes. Audrey gets up and tries to lay on Louise's bed. Her tail swishes, teeth chatter. Downstairs, Abigail, washing dishes, watches Gloriana sweeping the floors. Charles on the phone. That's right. 3:30. Unless something comes up. No, there's an inn on Main Street. Conversation fades out. Abigail looks at the kitchen window, sun setting, face dark in thought. Audrey subtly comes downstairs, takes a bread roll from the kitchen table, and quickly leaves. Abigail turns her head but is not given the opportunity to speak. Abigail watches as Audrey disappears up the stairs. Charles. All right. I'll let you know. Send Emile my regards. Goodbye. He hangs up the phone, looking to Gloriana. Anyone else we need to call? Gloriana scoffs. Not tonight. Abigail keeps her eyes on her work, paws wet. Eyes start to close. Several days later, Grass fronds sway meekly in the early morning snow. Grasshoppers flee as finches land in the mud. Audrey walks through the open field carrying a picnic basket, wearing a dark green coat with brown fur trim. She stays near the cover of a few scattered boulders. Watches from behind as a few toms there's an error. As a few toms loiter around the yard. 2 black trains lay dormant. Watchful, Audrey keeps her distance, backing deeper into the wild outskirts of Chamberfield. She settles into a snowy ditch, crouched on all fours, waiting. Adrian. Hello. Audrey. Shit. Startled, Audrey's tail puffs up as she jumps. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you, Adrian says. Funny seeing you here, though. Adrian gazes at Audrey with a sympathetic but brave smile. Audrey. Sure, very funny. Does your mother know that you get up early to creep on girls? I'm not the one who's creeping. You look like a fox crouching in that hole. What do you think you're doing eyeing up the freight yard? What's it to you? I can do what I like. Yes, but it's awfully strange. You're all alone out here. Don't tell me you were thinking of bumming. So what if I am? It's none of your business. Well, it's a bad idea. Pop says that the bulls wait out and shoot the ones that hang off the sides. That's dumb, and you're a fool for believing him. Look, gesturing to her basket, you don't even have a proper bindle stick. Audrey, embarrassed. It's hard to make one, okay? This is what I had. Adrian. I don't know. You still look like a little prairie girl to me. Leave me alone, Adrian. Shut your mouth and read the room for once. You could at least show some sympathy. I'm sorry. I know we've never gotten along well, but I am truly sorry for what happened. It was very heroic of her. I knew Louise was a good cat, but I think I underestimated how brave she was. Have you gone to see Esther yet? I haven't done much of anything. Well, I have. I think she was surprised to see me. I heard they moved her to Mrs. Sakta's house, if you wanted to visit. Maybe. Why don't we go now? Sure, it's early, but we could drop into town first and bring something to eat. I told you, I'm not going into town. You're still on about that. You'll regret it. It would be an awfully sorry thing to do to your mother while she's already grieving. I'm not running away. I just need to get out of here and go somewhere they won't find me for a little bit. Things have been terrible back home. Abigail's pathetic and Mother's anxious planning some funeral, but she and Father are going to invite these dumb family members I've never met and have nothing to do with me. No one who knew Louise or cared about her. They'll only be there because they're afraid to look bad. So it's a protest? Frustrated. I don't know, but I can't stay here. Sure you can. Well, I'm not going to. And the least you could do is shut your mouth about seeing me. Got it? Adrian pauses, shuffling his paws. Nah, I don't think so. Do you want me to pay you? Thought you'd be glad to get rid of me. It just isn't right for you to put yourself in danger, Audrey. I'm learning my lesson. If I had been less of a pushover, maybe things would be different now. What are you going on about? I saw Louise climb into the house that night. I was scared stiff, all of us were. But Louise was so brave. I just stood there watching. Audrey tenses, fur bushing up. But I know that if she were here now, she wouldn't want you to do this. So I mean it. Don't. Audrey slashes an unsheathed paw at Adrian's face, her broken claw drawing blood against his brow. She flings herself at Adrian, crashing him down into the snow and holding her paws on his throat. Adrian struggles to breathe, legs kicking. Audrey pants, watching him struggle. She notices the blood on his face and lets go, alarmed. Don't talk about Louise like that ever again. Adrian gets onto his paws, on fours, and looks at Audrey fearfully. Audrey, from between clenched teeth. Go on, run! Get out of here, I'll hit you again. Disturbed, Adrian skitters away, disappearing into the woods on all fours. Audrey watches him go, expression dropping, with terror at what she's done. Frustrated, she rubs her ears and her face in her paws, gasping. Shivering, she turns back to the train yard and teeters forward. The closer train begins to whir, rumbling. Fear grips Audrey's body. but she moves forward, crouching behind crates in the freight yard. Without being spotted, she climbs onto the platform between two rail cars, grabbing the railing and making her body small. Soon the car begins to move, the train screeching and throwing up gray plumes of smoke into the air. Eyes determined, Audrey watches the ground start to move from under her. The train quickly picks up speed and Audrey clings to the railing, thrown back by the force. The train lurches eastward along wooded tracks. Land rushes by, and soon Audrey sees the last buildings of Chamberfield disappearing over the horizon. Watching intently, the wind assaults her small ears, and Audrey backs into the door of the freight car behind her, surprised to find it opens. The car is filled with loaded wooden crates. Audrey settles on a stack, sitting with her tail around her paws, looking around anxiously. She looks at her paws, trembling once with anger, now with fear. She gets up and climbs onto a crate near the door to look out the door window, but she is unable to determine anything from her surroundings. Mewling pitifully, she backs up further as the train curves around a bend in the tracks, groaning. A highly stacked crate crashes down behind her, and others shift along the ground as she is thrown to the side of the car, letting out a yell of alarm. Getting hastily to her paws, she runs to grab onto the door for support. Outside, the train wheels whine and whir. Panting, Audrey's expression grows grim as the train carries her on. About half an hour passes when Audrey opens her eyes, hearing the wheels screeching as the train decelerates. At once alert, Audrey looks attentively through the window and sees tall buildings scattered on the horizon. As soon as the train comes to a stop, Audrey opens the door and drops down under the train, running close to the ground on all fours with her basket in her teeth. She rushes into a snowbank, sheltered from sight. Several Toms appear to unload the train as Audrey quits the train yard. Panting, she heads for a nearby building, large and made of gray cut stone. Sticking close to the wall, she finds an unlocked door and slides inside. The train station. Passengers load and unload. Distracted, Audrey bumps into a richly dressed Molly. Ouch! Mind yourself, Kit! Sorry. She weaves among the crowds. Hopeful, her eyes dart around the platform for signs. On the station wall, she finds a complicated train map, the words, Union Station, Fuchsford. She calms down significantly. Then she looks to the crowds behind her. No one pays her any notice. A notice board displays flyers advertising the city. Historic downtown, open theater, harbor market. Sketchings of the ocean show gulls, whales, and sailors. Audrey takes a flyer, and with purpose, marches out of the station. The sky is bright over the long city streets, snow glittering, and Toms and Mollies going about their daily business. Looking at her flyer, Audrey walks along the street toward the sea. End chapter.